they be attended to? It's a paradigm shift. It's not going to be easy to make, but it is necessary to make. And if I'm in a wheelchair when it finally happens, I will have considered it a success. But I'm a little impatient, so I'd kind of like to move things along.
Well, anyone who has trouble raising their children, just find out their strengths and weaknesses, and every time they start facing new challenges as they mature and grow up, find them out and keep doing these things that help them until they grow up to be the man or woman you want them to be.
Or that they want to be.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really great that Hinsdale is opening up their doors and letting you in and starting to try to change something. Baby steps are really important. We're coming from a district that is not taking any of the baby steps. We've been trying to spoon feed. How do we get you into our district?
Well, first and foremost, school districts like to think highly of what they're doing,
Yes.
but then if they see someone else that's doing it better, they don't want to be a Johnny-come-lately necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody else is doing it better, they can either lead, follow, or get out of the way. So hopefully this district and others will lead by example.
I just want to kind of respond. I worked just my first year at this school, but I've worked closely with Sue, and we've had this conversation probably from the get-go, and with Mr. Macron and quite a few of the parents. And I know, when you say we're taking steps, it's very frustrating because we are taking steps, but steps take time, and that's the part that I know is frustrating to our parents. So I guess what I'm envisioning happening and where I feel like we're going, we've had the conversations with our staff, but we've hit the special ed staff. We've hit this, and the special ed staff usually are the people who are probably the most understanding of differences to begin with.
They're very much like what you were saying before. They see it every day. It's part of their lives. So they're much more receptive to it because those are the challenges that they actively need solutions for.
Then we've hit the support people, the related services along with that. And again, those are people who are working with children who have, differences. And now we're reaching out to the parents. And I think, our next step is that we need to start working with the general education teachers as well, because this is something we're trying to get to go through the school, not just to get to our little group and to our, so we know what we're doing. I think, Brian, one of the biggest things you had said was that we're not just working with our students, we're working with the general population to understand and respect each other. So it's a huge undertaking, it's a huge production, but it's something that we do feel is valuable and necessary, not just for kids on the spectrum, but for all people who go to the school. So it is truly a belief we have, but the process of getting there is not quick, and I think we all find that frustrating.
And also keep in mind that we're not dealing with an institution. We're dealing with a host of individuals with mindsets, with values, with assumptions, with prejudices, with stereotypes. And there's always going to be that one person who says, works fine for me, why do I got to change? I mean, you can have an IEP that everybody else is following except one teacher, and that one teacher brings the house of cards down. So as much as we put an effort into getting everybody on the same page, we're still dealing with human beings with their own subjectivity, with their own egos, with their own inflexibility. Rigidness and inflexibility is not the province of people on the spectrum, okay? It's a human characteristic. But we do what we can, and we do it until we get the results that our kids deserve, all of our kids. Because the neurotypical kids, that's the average person, deserves to benefit from a relationship with a spectrum child the same as a spectrum child deserves to benefit from a neurotypical relationship. So this just isn't about the teachers, it's also about the student body. The student body who perceives fitting in and belongingness as the way things need to be. They don't value difference. They think difference is odd, it's weird, it's wrong, it's to be discouraged. So we're talking about changing values, shifting paradigms. And this isn't something that's done through a lecture. This is something that's done through changing the school culture. And I got nothing better to do, so why not start there?
Well, I know one thing. You think your children are failures, you're wrong, because any information they know is valuable to yourself and themselves. Like say, if something happens to your money, you lose your house, maybe they can help take care of you if they know how, because any information that they have is valuable within themselves. The more information they learn, the more valuable your children become.
Another way of putting that is any contribution is meaningful,
Yep,
regardless.
that's what I mean.
Wait a minute.
Brian, it's really clear that, you know, among 2,700 students, we have students who are not so good at accepting differences and don't handle it very well. But how about if we focus for a minute on the students who do accept differences well? We still don't see friendships developing. We still have a friendship problem, even among those students who are not bullying or not being negative or not shunning. We just don't see genuine friendships developing. What?
We see interactions.
Yeah, but not the kind of friendships that extend after 3 o'clock and before 8 o'clock.
And that also has a lot to do with the fact that you have two different people with two different neurologies who define friendship differently. A neurotypical child wants to connect emotionally. A spectrum child wants to engage in information exchange. They want to set this primarily, because it varies from child to child. A girl on the spectrum, more likely than not, wants to connect emotionally. But whether they want to connect emotionally or they want to connect psychologically, they go about it in different ways. It's like putting two people who speak different languages in the same room and say, get to know one another. It's going to be hard to do. So a lot of facilitating that friendship is, first of all, they have to have the same friendship needs. They want to have the same things from that friendship. Otherwise, those two people aren't going to connect. If they do not have a common point of reference, I don't care how much time they spend together, they're not going to connect. So in a lot of ways, it's connecting the right student with the right other student, as opposed to just saying, go, be friends.
But is that the connection that we are supposed to be, I mean, is that supposed to come from the school personnel to say, connect with this person because you have the same interests, or how do we facilitate that
Nobody
better?
can tell you who you're going to like.
Right.
I know you have to find
No,
out
what the school
for
can
yourself.
facilitate is to teach parents the methodology, okay,
Even though
to accomplish that goal. That's a possibility, but that's something that the school system has to extend itself to do. And there are very few school systems that ever do anything even remotely what's necessary for that.
Well, and many schools see their job as academic.
Right.
But ultimately, this is a community effort. It doesn't begin and end with the school. It also includes the families, the neighborhood, the church, any place this child engages. This needs to occur, because if in one environment this stuff's being reinforced, but every other environment this child experiences sabotage, they won't trust anything.
Our experience must just be different, because the fear I have is entirely different than this. We feel like over the last several years, the IEP and the teachers and the social workers have gone out of their way to get to know our kid personally and help them, thrive as much as he can. What scares the Jesus out of me is when he leaves this kind of artificial environment with that kind of support, how's he going to adapt to the system and the rules on their own? And how do we as parents do as much to accelerate his ability to succeed in a broader range? Or should our goal be, don't try to get him to succeed in a broader range, get him into something he really can thrive in and don't worry about the rest? I mean, how do you, where do you look at that?
One of the best things about the school system is also one of the worst things about the school system. The fact that you don't have to do anything. Your schedule is determined for you, you know where you're going, in what order, you know where the cafeteria is. You don't have to make too many decisions. They give you a syllabus telling you how everything is going to happen, in what order. What do you need to do for yourself? So once you go out into college where there are no IEPs, it's pretty much like kicking a bird out of the nest on the first day. Not giving them a chance to spread their wings a little bit. So transition planning needs to happen on day one, not halfway into the quarter of their senior year. And the way you can kind of buffer that a little bit is what you do with him outside of school. Because whereas the school structure may be enabling, plenty of opportunities for your child to engage the world by necessity. Zach, when we go to the movie theater, who asks for the tickets and the food?
The cashier.
But who asks the cashier? Who tells the cashier what they want? Do I do it or do you do it?
I do.
Okay. When we go to eat out at restaurants, who tells the waiter or the waitress what you want to eat?
I do.
Okay. Otherwise, he doesn't eat. Because if a person doesn't want to socialize and they have the option not to socialize, they won't do it. But if the only way to get a need met is through another human being, they do it because they have to.
Ryan,
So
what
in
you just-
school,
what
if
you
that's
just
not the
did, though,
case-
is very Socratic, and that's a technique. And that's a technique that you don't see in school systems either.
They
That's a
don't know it.
technique you very seldomly see with parents, with PD kids. They're not Socratic. They tell the kid what the kid has to know, has to do, has to see. They build schedules in K through
Mhm.
5 that say you have to follow this schedule. There's nothing Socratic about it.
Like I was
that's where
saying
the
before, in
self-esteem
response to
is.
your question, it's more important to ask the child what their thought process is to teach them to do it. You don't teach a child from the outside in by imposing structure on their life. You teach them how to construct it themselves, like I did going through the chemotherapy. When my environment was chaos, I needed to find internal control, internal structure, which is why I was able to kind of construct the life I have now. But don't be fooled and think that there are no challenges left in my life because I can stand before you and speak articulately. I am a bit of a verbal savant. That's one of my skill sets. So people hear me speak and say, oh, you're so articulate, and you really seem to have it together. Really, spend 24 hours with me. See me after I'm coming out of a crowded movie theater. I rarely see the very end of a movie because if I see it coming, I'm getting the heck out of there so I don't have to bump around with the crowd. And if I do miss the ending, I will huddle in my seat or I'll stand off to the side so everybody leaves before I have to get in that crowd. I'm pretty darn disorganized. My short-term memory is non-existent. I have to write down everything. I need to count on my fingers. I can't do some simple calculations in my head. Why? Because I'm not good at that stuff. So I have meticulously surrounded myself throughout my life with people I call my advisors. They're not my enablers. They're not my aides. They're not my assistants. They're my advisors. They're people I go to because they're specialists. If your car breaks down, you say, well, I have to go to my resource mechanic now because my car is broken. I'll go to my mechanic. Go to my accountant for my taxes. It's important to use language that's empowering as opposed to disabling. My middle boy, his 7-year-old brother, the way I encourage the staff to speak to him is you're not going to occupational therapy. You're going to occupational education. Because you're there to get an education, not there to get therapy. Therapy is for broken people. You're not going to speech therapy, you're going to speech education. Because the more you use terms like therapy, you're separating the children. You're singling them out in a negative way. Use terms that build the kids up.
So to that point, and Beth, thank you for having Brian come out and talk to the team, but so you have this 4-hour conversation. Are there some very specific action steps that say, here for the next 6 months, try this, and this, and do it somewhat systemically so we can see if it, because this needs to happen before that we could add the next layer, and before we could add the next layer.
That's exactly how we
the
did
next
it,
layer.
yeah. Gave them a lot of solid strategies that day.
How do you feel about disclosure? And I don't just mean in the classroom, because we've done that, and it was very successful for our son. He's in 6th grade and 11 years old. But
Say what?
I mean about our son starting to open up to other kids, and if he senses, and he has started, where they might think he's a little different than them. How do you feel about him opening up to some of these kids and telling them about his Asperger's?
It has everything to do with how you disclose. It's not important to use the term, because the term, especially little kids, that term sounds like something else. Asperger's. Oh, Who serves those? What menu is that on? And they can teach you about it. You know? But it's more important that they teach their classmates about themselves. So if there's something socially that they're missing, and you can educate the child on that, let them disclose that. You know what, this doesn't work for me. It'd work a lot better if you just tell me what you want, as opposed to asking me to figure it out. So it's more self-advocating and saying, this is what I need. To be a friend with you, this is what I need from you, as opposed to giving them a lesson on the autism spectrum. Because that will throw kids. And unfortunately, bullies are everywhere, and you don't want to give them ammo. And there are some, I was just at a school meeting yesterday, and the parents warned me about the principal. Because the principal at a previous meeting says, is there some word we can use to snap your kid out of his autism? This was the principal. So the bullies don't just exist in the classroom, they can exist in the administration. So when you're talking about disclosing, you got to think about the context in which the child's in. Because when the job I had before I went into private practice, I disclosed to my employers. Next thing I know, I was part of the rumor mill and my sanity was being questioned. Because they heard Asperger's as a mental illness. I gave them reams of articles on what it meant. I highlighted the stuff that applied to me. It got added to some other stack. It became so miserable I had to get out of there. So there's no real magic way to disclose, because you never know how it's going to be heard by the person you're disclosing to. It is so much easier to just tell them who you are and what you need, and if that person can't help you, move on to the next one. Okay?
Yeah,
Remember how you said how the principal wants to snap a kid out of autism? You can't, because it's a gift that's sealed inside of you. It's not a disease. It's not a problem with your child. It's a gift. Anyone who thinks it's a disease, they're wrong, because people have been trying to cure it when they don't see that it's a special gift. Are you trying to ask a question?
No,
Thanks, buddy.
I just, before you ask, Sue, I wanted to tell you that, you know, he had given us golden nuggets, they're called, and those are the specifics, but I think that's gonna be part of the consulting that we do with Brian, and that I know, parents need to know the things that we are working on, so I think that would be a good next step as well, to let you know the things we went through, more
Well,
specifically.
To follow up on that, though, as a trainer by trade for many years, it's not enough just to give them the golden nuggets, but also to do the monitoring and the follow-up.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's
to
part of what we were
ensure,
talking about.
because if they walk out the door, 95% of the people have just ended the 3 hours of their life and it's gone. Unless they internalize it, and the only way to internalize it, in some cases, is to force them, and that force comes through the monitoring.
Absolutely, you're talking about accountability. Because I don't want to get surgery from somebody who just walked out of class saying, I think I get this. You know, I've seen some slides, that film was pretty compelling. I can follow the directions. You know, I want somebody who's actually had some application time, who's actually implemented the strategies and seen the desired outcome. So, yeah, that 4-hour training I did was a drop in the bucket. That was to kind of give them the theoretical outlay of how I think and how I approach things, and what I have found to be effective in helping engage these students in not only relationship with the staff, but also in the larger population. The next step is to, okay, let's put this stuff to work and have me consult on individual cases to fine-tune the approach of each social worker, each teacher, to make sure everybody's doing it the same way. Because that's how you're going to maximize the outcomes.
Or everybody's doing it.
Yeah. And that's the important thing of having somebody very supportively looking over your shoulder.
Talking about bullying, how do you address it with your child? So, you know, my son's getting bullied. I try to talk to him about it, but it obviously affects him. I mean, what can I be saying to him different just to kind of give him a, you know, I mean, I tell him that you know, the child's probably being bullied themselves, you know, I mean, what can I say that?
Well, the solution isn't always in teaching your child perspective taking, especially if they're young. It's more important to teach them self-advocacy. So they're being victimized. What do they do to help themselves? How do they protect themselves? Because the perspective taking is something that's not really necessary, because bullying is a safety issue, especially if it's physical. So you can be trying to teach them to befriend the bully, or how do you not put yourself in those situations, or if you are in that situation, who's your safety person. So bullying, especially with a spectrum child, whose basic challenge is in the area of engaging others, how on earth can you teach them to negotiate something as complex as bullying? They need to bring in the grown-ups. They need to have reinforcements. And please do not let a staff member get away with saying, well, boys will be boys. Yeah, this is a growing experience. This is just part of their life. Baloney. There's nothing that says people have a right to treat you badly. Because it happens doesn't mean it's acceptable. That's what self-advocacy is about. Now, technically, we're supposed to finish around 8:30. I'll hang around a little while longer. I have business cards in the back. I have a website with copious articles. And I will also be back in the future at Beth's discretion. Zach, you want to say something before you wrap
I
up?
was going to ask if anyone had any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Zach?
How do you feel you're doing in school and navigating through, you're still in grade school or are you in middle school yet?
Middle school.
You're already in middle school.
I am doing very, very well.
Well, that's good to hear.
What do you do when they bully you, Zach?
Well, sometimes I do take it, but I gotta learn to ignore. Well, I am starting to learn.
And when ignoring doesn't work, what do you do then?
I'm not sure. Sometimes I end up panicking, but I can't do that forever. Well, I've already got a student who's pushing me around class.
Okay. Do you ever tell anybody when you're being bullied?
Well, you just don't seem to care right now.
Well, if the teachers don't care, who do you tell?
Well, my counselor, who really wants me to let go of the subject.
Okay, and when that doesn't work, who do you tell?
You
And then what do I do?
talk with the teachers and tell them what's going on.
Are you afraid you're gonna be a snitch?
Nope, I know I'll be successful with his help.
Oh, yeah.
I read a story about how good he is and with how much of a true father he's been. I know he can lead me to be the man I know I can be.
Well, what about your friends? Do they think you're a snitch?
I'm not sure. Well, some may think I'm weird, but I know I am a little. I thought you guys were
Wait, are you cool with the way you are now?
Yeah, some people
with it,
like me.
right? Some people would?
We
Some
do.
people like me.
Oh,
I even have a best buddy class.
See, what Zachary learned was that you ask until. If you have a need, you just ask until you find the person who's going to give you what you need. And if teachers don't listen, counsel doesn't listen, it comes to me, I listen, and then I see to it that they listen, because I'm persistent. And I don't go in there making demands and saying, this is the way it has to be, this is my kid. I don't do it through force, I do it through education. This is my child, this is what he needs, this is why it isn't working. And what are your goals for my child? You want to educate him. How can he feel open to education in a hostile environment? How can he be open to information if he's defensive? So what can we do? Not what do you have to do. What can we do? How can I support you in supporting my child so that he can benefit and actually accomplish the goals you'd like him to do? It's that kind of collaborative mindset that's ultimately going to bring teachers and parents together to work as teammates as opposed to adversaries.
You had asked about getting Brian King for your district. Actually, Jim Kupris is the one who brought Brian King to us because he had a friend who worked in another district and he was Downers Grove. Jim, was it?
Downers South.
Downers South. And he said, you know, they have this guy that they're working with, and he kind of was talking to him about some of the things that Brian was doing. And Brian, I'm sure if you give a card to somebody in your district who could possibly call him, Brian's extremely approachable, and we just had a few conversations and he was here. So, you know, it was very simple to get him to come here through conversations.
I have a question on that. Those are all feeder districts to Central and South. Okay, why doesn't Central?
I don't know which district
Are
you're
you
from.
in a feeder school to Central? What school are you? What district?
We're actually with Downers Grove,
Oh, that's, no, you're not.
So this, oh, okay.
which is kind of alarming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now if we could just move our schools out of the state of Illinois, we'd have a fighting chance. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you, Brian.